The camera fades in on a stormy London skyline. Thunder rolls softly in the distance, and the narrator's voice cuts through the static like a whisper before the explosion. What if the fairy tale really is over? What if the most talked about couple in modern royal history has just reached the breaking point? The question hangs in the air for a second too long, and then, boom, footage flashes across the screen. Meghan Markle, head held high, eyes glassy but determined. A podium, a crowd of flashing cameras, and those 6 words that silenced the world: "I'm divorcing Prince Harry." Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. No one could believe it. Not after everything. Not after the exiled couple had built a new life in California. After the Netflix deals, the Oprah interviews, and the endless talk about healing and new beginnings. But here she was, saying it for the first time out loud. Calm, calculated, cold. And as those words spread across screens from Buckingham Palace to Beverly Hills, the UK froze. Headlines screamed. Commentators speculated. And the royal family, already fractured, bruised, and exhausted, went into full-blown panic. But behind that single, stunning announcement lies a story far deeper than the tabloids could ever print. It's not just a divorce. It's an unraveling. It's the collapse of a partnership that once promised to rewrite royal history. What if I told you this moment didn't happen overnight? That the seeds of Meghan's announcement were planted long before the cameras rolled, long before the world turned against her, or for her. Because this isn't a story of one bad day. This is the story of quiet resentment, of fame's poison, of a man torn between love and duty, and a woman tired of playing the role of royal perfection. The truth? This was always coming, and the world just didn't want to believe it. The camera cuts to slow-motion clips of the early days. Harry and Meghan smiling in the rain, holding hands as cameras flash. That perfect illusion of unity, the kind that sells millions of magazines. But then, images flicker, moments shift, awkward glances, stiff postures, missed touches. You start to see it. The disconnect. The fracture beneath the fairy tale. They looked perfect. But perfection, as we know, is the first sign of something cracking. When Meghan Markle first stepped into the royal spotlight, she was hailed as a breath of fresh air. An American actress, self-made, articulate, and unafraid. She represented something the monarchy desperately needed: modernity, diversity, relevance. But from the very beginning, there were whispers that she was too outspoken, too ambitious, too American. At first, Harry defended her fiercely. He went against tradition, against family, even against his brother. He gave up everything for her, or at least, that's how it seemed. But over time, something shifted. Fame became their new kingdom, and in Hollywood, crowns aren't made of gold. They're made of attention. And attention, as Meghan quickly learned, can be both a blessing and a curse. Because the truth is, when the world turns its eyes on you, it doesn't always blink. It stares, it dissects, it judges, and slowly, quietly, it suffocates. Behind closed doors in Montecito, away from the polished interviews and million-dollar gardens, things were falling apart. Small things at first. Missed dinners, long silences, unspoken tension. Harry, restless. Meghan, frustrated. Two people with the same dream, just very different ways of chasing it. She wanted independence. He wanted redemption. She wanted to build an empire. He wanted to rebuild his name. But what happens when two people love each other deeply and still want entirely different lives? Ask yourself that. Because at some point, every love story faces a mirror. And when Harry and Meghan looked into theirs, what they saw staring back wasn't love anymore. It was exhaustion. The signs were there for months, hidden in plain sight. The canceled public appearances, the separate interviews, the awkward moments caught on camera, like when Meghan pulled her hand away as Harry reached for it during a red carpet moment. Fans noticed. Body language experts dissected every movement. But no one thought it would end like this. Not like this. And yet, if you look closer, you'll see that the announcement wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't even emotional. It was planned, crafted, timed. A statement meant not just for Harry, but for the entire institution that once rejected her. Sources close to the couple claim Meghan had been preparing for weeks. The legal team, the PR consultants, the drafted scripts. Even the timing of the press conference, scheduled to coincide with a major royal event in London, was deliberate. Some say it was revenge. Others, redemption. But either way, it was a masterclass in control. So here's the real question. Why now? Why, after years of defending their love against the world, would Meghan Markle choose to end it so publicly, so dramatically, so surgically? Was it betrayal? Was it exhaustion? Or was it the final act in a royal drama that's been scripted since day one? Because make no mistake, this wasn't just a breakup. This was a declaration of independence, the second one of Meghan's life. First, she left the monarchy. Now, she's leaving the man who tied her to it. And if you think that's cold, think again. Behind that calm face and carefully chosen words, there's a storm brewing. The same woman who once cried on camera over tabloid abuse is now reclaiming her narrative with a vengeance. And in the process, she's about to expose truths that could shake the monarchy to its core. But here's where it gets darker. According to insiders, this decision wasn't mutual. Harry didn't see it coming, or maybe he refused to. He still believed they could fix it, that their California dream just needed time to settle. He was wrong. In the days leading up to the announcement, Harry was said to be in London, attending a quiet royal charity event. Meghan, meanwhile, was in Los Angeles, reportedly meeting with a media strategist. That's the word used publicly. But the reality? It was something else entirely. Those close to her claim she had already recorded her statement, days before Harry even knew she'd made up her mind. The crew was discreet. The contract ironclad. Meghan's words were rehearsed down to the syllable. And when the announcement hit, it was like watching a chess match where one player didn't even know the game had started. Harry's reaction, insiders say, was immediate and devastating. One witness described him as white as snow, staring at the television as her words played. Another claimed he tried to call her repeatedly, but she didn't pick up. In that moment, the prince who once defied the crown for love realized the crown wasn't the one who took everything from him. It was love itself. But before you start feeling pity, think about this. Was Meghan truly the villain in this story? Or was she simply doing what every woman is told to do but rarely allowed to? Taking back her power. Because while the world might frame her as the heartbreaker, Meghan's side of the story is one of survival. One of feeling silenced, controlled, and constantly compared to a system that never wanted her to win. Maybe this wasn't about divorce at all. Maybe this was about identity. About a woman refusing to be defined by anyone, royal or not. And yet, the timing couldn't be worse. King Charles battling health rumors. Prince William fighting to hold the monarchy's image together. And now, this public fracture that makes every royal scandal before it look like child's play. Imagine the ripple effect. The palace scrambling to draft statements. The press dissecting every word. Royal advisors holding emergency meetings, not to fix the marriage, but to contain the fallout. Because Meghan's announcement wasn't just personal, it was political. You see, by declaring this now, she's not only cutting ties with Harry. She's cutting ties with the monarchy's last attempt to look modern, relatable, and human. And in doing so, she may have just thrown Britain's most fragile institution back into chaos. And maybe that was the point. Some say she's reclaiming her voice. Others say she's rewriting history. But whatever you believe, one thing is clear. Meghan Markle has never done anything by accident. Every step, every silence, every calculated smile, there's a reason. And if you think the divorce is the end of the story, you're wrong. It's the beginning. Because before Meghan dropped that announcement, there were signs, leaks, phone calls, strange disappearances that hinted something far more complicated was brewing behind the scenes. A hidden letter, a leaked tape, a royal confrontation so explosive it made even the press step back. But that's where the story truly begins. Because what Meghan did next wasn't just about ending a marriage. It was about exposing a system, about revenge, truth, and freedom. And once those secrets started coming to light, there was no going back. The fairy tale had ended. The reckoning had begun. And as one royal insider whispered to a reporter that night, "You think this is big? Just wait until you hear what she left behind." But what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. It started on a Tuesday night. The kind of night that looks calm on the outside but hides a storm beneath the surface. The Montecito estate glowed faintly under the California moonlight, and from a distance, it looked like a dream, a mansion of peace, success, and luxury. But inside, behind the glass walls and silence that lingered too long, something inside Meghan Markle had finally snapped. She was pacing. Her bare feet against the marble floor made soft echoes that filled the living room. In her hand, her phone lit up with unanswered calls, messages, missed voice notes. One from Harry, then another. She didn't open them. Not yet. The world would find out soon enough. Tonight wasn't about reconciliation. It was about liberation. At least, that's what she kept telling herself. Why do I always have to be the one who bends? She whispered to herself. Why am I always the villain? Those words, villain, manipulative, controlling, they had followed her since the day she entered royal life. It didn't matter how many charities she launched or how many cameras captured her smile. To them, she was always the outsider, the American intruder who disrupted the system. And now, after years of fighting the media, the palace, and even her own husband's silence, she was ready to end the game. But what triggered it? What was the moment that turned quiet frustration into irreversible decision? It wasn't a single fight. It wasn't one betrayal. It was a slow accumulation, 1,000 small cuts that had finally bled her patience dry. That evening, Harry was in another room, headphones on, speaking to someone on video call. Meghan had walked in quietly, and though she hadn't meant to eavesdrop, one sentence stopped her dead. "Yeah, mate, I just don't know how to handle her anymore," Harry said softly. "It's like she's somewhere else. Like she's already gone." Meghan froze. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't cruel. That almost made it worse. His voice was tired, resigned, like a man who had already surrendered to loss but hadn't yet admitted it to himself. She turned away before he could see her. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. That was the moment. The quiet admission that confirmed what she already knew. Their love had become a performance. A fragile illusion for cameras, contracts, and documentaries. And no matter how much she wanted to keep pretending, something inside her had broken. Later that night, Meghan sat outside by the garden fire pit, staring at the flames. Her mother Doria had once told her, "Every woman reaches a point where silence feels like self-betrayal." That sentence hit her harder than she expected, because she realized she'd been silent for too long. Inside the house, Harry tried to bridge the distance. "Meg, can we talk?" he asked from the doorway, voice gentle but tense. She didn't turn around. "Talk about what, Harry? How broken we are? How much pretending we've done for these people who still hate us?" "Not for them," he said, stepping closer. "For us." She laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Us? Do we even exist anymore, Harry?" That silence afterward said everything. Two people once united against the world now stood miles apart in the same house. Harry's voice broke slightly. "I gave up everything for you." Meghan looked up, eyes sharp. "No, Harry, you gave up everything for yourself. Because you wanted to escape your family, your guilt, your pain, and I just happened to be the one holding your hand when you ran." He blinked, stunned. "That's not fair." "No," she said softly. "It's finally the truth." She walked past him, brushing his arm lightly. Not affection, just finality. He wanted to follow her, to argue, but something inside him told him not to. Because deep down, he knew she was right. Later, after he went upstairs, Meghan pulled out her laptop. The cursor blinked in front of a blank document. For minutes she didn't type, just stared. Then, slowly, the words began to appear. "To the people of the United Kingdom and beyond." Her fingers moved with purpose. She wasn't writing a script for a reality show or a brand statement. This was her truth, raw, unfiltered, and long overdue. Outside, a sudden gust of wind blew through the garden. A glass on the table toppled, shattering against the stone. Meghan didn't flinch. She looked at the pieces for a moment and whispered, "Perfect metaphor." Upstairs, Harry couldn't sleep. He scrolled through old photos, their wedding day, the birth of Archie, the moments when everything still felt possible. He stopped on one particular photo, Meghan laughing, carefree, her hand resting gently on his chest. Back then, her eyes had sparkled. Now, he couldn't even remember the last time she looked at him like that. He closed his phone, staring into the dark. "Maybe she's right," he muttered to himself. "Maybe we were doomed the moment we said, 'I do' in front of the world instead of just each other." The next morning, Montecito looked like paradise again. Birds, sunlight, calm breeze. But inside, the house was heavy with tension. Meghan was already dressed, hair tied back, suitcase half-packed. Harry came downstairs in a t-shirt, eyes red. You're leaving? She didn't answer immediately. I have meetings, she said. In LA. He frowned. Meetings? You didn't mention any meetings. I didn't think I needed to, she replied. What does that mean? It means, she said, pausing just long enough to look him in the eye, I need to start living my own life again. And there it was. The truth, quiet but final. Harry sat down on the couch, his voice barely above a whisper. So that's it. You're done. Meghan exhaled, slow and controlled. No, Harry. I'm just done pretending. For a moment, neither spoke. You could almost hear the ticking clock on the wall. It was the sound of an ending they both saw coming, but hoped they could delay. As she walked toward the door, Harry said, You'll regret this. She turned slightly. Maybe, but regret is better than resentment. Then she left. Later that day, Meghan arrived at a quiet Beverly Hills office, sleek, minimal, confidential. Her lawyer, a calm woman in her 50s, greeted her with a knowing look. You're sure about this? Meghan nodded. I've been sure for a long time. I just didn't have the courage to say it. The lawyer opened a folder. Then let's make it official. And as the pen touched paper, something in Meghan shifted. Not relief, not victory, just a strange mix of grief and power, the kind that comes when you finally accept the truth you've been avoiding. But here's the twist. Hours later, Meghan received a message, a short voice note from Harry. His tone was quiet, calm, almost resigned. If this is what you really want, he said, then I won't fight you. But I need to know, was any of it ever real? She listened to it 3 times, tears silently rolling down her cheeks. Then she deleted it. Not because she didn't care, but because some questions don't deserve answers when the answers would only reopen wounds. That night, she looked out her hotel window, watching the city lights flicker. Somewhere, out there, reporters were already piecing together rumors. Somewhere, royal advisors were drafting crisis responses. And somewhere, Harry was alone in a house that suddenly felt too big. But Meghan wasn't thinking about the noise outside. She was thinking about the peace inside. The quiet that comes when you finally stop explaining yourself to people who will never understand. Still, one thought lingered, a whisper she couldn't silence. If freedom feels this lonely, was it ever worth the fight? She didn't know the answer. Not yet. But what she did know was that tomorrow, the world would know the truth. Her truth. And when that truth hit the headlines, nothing, not the monarchy, not Hollywood, not even Harry, would ever be the same again. Because this was more than a breakup. This was a declaration, a storm that had been building for years. And as the sun rose over Los Angeles the next morning, Meghan received the confirmation text from her publicist. It's time. The announcement was scheduled. The cameras were ready. And the world was about to witness the royal fairy tale implode in real time. But what came next? The reaction from Buckingham Palace, the hidden letter, the betrayal that followed, would make this look like the calm before the hurricane. And no one, not even Meghan, was prepared for the chaos about to unfold. That it wasn't written in anger. It wasn't even written in haste. It was quiet, deliberate, and frighteningly calm. Weeks before Meghan Markle stood before cameras to announce her divorce from Prince Harry, she wrote a letter, a private message never meant for public eyes. Not to the palace, not to the press, not even to Harry. This letter was her confession, her manifesto, and, as some insiders would later whisper, her warning. It began simply. To the one who once made me believe in fairy tales. No names, no dates, just ink on expensive cream stationery, the kind you'd expect from a royal desk, not a Hollywood hotel suite. She wrote it in the early hours of the morning, her laptop closed, her phone turned face down. The only light in the room came from the soft glow of a single bedside lamp and the pale reflection of the moon through the curtains. She didn't plan the words. They came out of her like steam escaping from a pressure cooker that had been sealed too long. For years, Meghan had been accused of scripting everything. Her speeches, her statements, even her emotions. But this letter was different. It wasn't crafted for image. It was raw, painful, honest in a way that scared her. It started with love, then drifted into loss. I don't know when we stopped being us, she wrote. Maybe it was the moment we traded privacy for power, or when the silence between us became louder than the applause. She paused after that line, staring at it for a long time. Then she kept going. I thought leaving the palace would save us. I thought California would heal you. I thought I could build a world where we'd both finally breathe. But all I did was build a bigger cage. One we can't escape from because now it's made of cameras, contracts, and broken promises. Every word was a blade, not aimed to wound Harry, but to release herself. At the end of the first page, she switched pens. The ink bled darker, heavier, as if the emotion thickened with every sentence. You once told me, I'll never let them win. But, Harry, maybe they didn't have to. Maybe we destroyed ourselves trying to prove them wrong. When she was done, she folded the pages neatly and slipped them into a plain envelope. No royal seal, no initials, just one word written on the front. Closure. But here's where it gets strange. She didn't send it to Harry. Instead, Meghan handed the letter to someone else. A mutual friend, a quiet intermediary who had been part of their circle since the early days of the Sussex transition. That person, according to multiple whispers later, was instructed to hold it until it was time. Time for what? No one knew. Days passed. Meghan went on with her usual schedule: quiet meetings, wellness events, PR planning. On the surface, she looked composed. But inside, something had shifted. The letter had lifted something off her shoulders, but it had also planted something new: resolve. And it didn't take long for word of the mysterious document to reach people who weren't supposed to know. The first leak came from London. A palace insider contacted a journalist with a cryptic text. She's written something. Private. Emotional. Dangerous. The journalist dismissed it at first. Just another rumor in the endless carousel of royal drama. But then, a second source confirmed it. And then a third. Soon, speculation spread like wildfire. What had Meghan written? To whom? And why now? Back in California, Harry began to sense something was off. She was distant again, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Conversations turned shallow. Dinners silent. The once fiery debates that filled their evenings now replaced by cold politeness. Are you okay? Harry asked one night, his voice tentative. I'm fine, she said, smiling faintly. But her eyes betrayed her. They looked elsewhere, as if already living in another world. A few nights later, Harry stumbled across a note left on Meghan's desk. It wasn't the letter, but a small post-it. In her handwriting, it read, "Sometimes endings are the only honest thing left." He stared at it for a long time, his stomach sinking. Was that a clue? A cry for help? Or a prelude to goodbye? What Harry didn't know was that the letter, her hidden message, had already been duplicated. Meghan's confidant, acting on instinct or perhaps fear, made a photocopy before sealing it away. Why? Because they believed it might someday matter. And it did. Weeks later, when Meghan's announcement exploded across the media, that letter resurfaced in the hands of someone unexpected, a close friend who, out of guilt or self-preservation, shared excerpts with a Hollywood contact. That contact, in turn, passed it to a journalist. Soon, snippets appeared online, a bigger cage made of cameras. We destroyed ourselves trying to prove them wrong. Maybe they didn't have to win. The media went into overdrive. Was this Meghan's personal goodbye to Harry? Was it written before the split? Or after? Was it a leak? Or was it a warning shot? And most of all, who was the mysterious person she entrusted it to? Insiders began to point fingers. Some said it was Marcus Anderson, her longtime friend from Soho House, the man who introduced her to Harry. Others whispered it was Tyler Perry, the Hollywood mogul who offered them refuge during their post-royal exile. And a few, the most cynical ones, suggested it was her lawyer, who kept the document as leverage. But the one person who truly knew never spoke. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Buckingham Palace had caught wind of the story. Late-night calls between senior aides revealed the growing anxiety. If that letter exists, one advisor warned, we must ensure it doesn't resurface during proceedings. Proceedings. That was the word they used, as if the divorce was already an inevitability. And maybe it was, because when Meghan sealed that envelope, she'd already made her decision. She wasn't just ending a marriage. She was reclaiming authorship of her life. And that letter, poetic, tragic, unguarded, was the first page of her new script. But here's the part the tabloids never got right. The letter wasn't just about Harry. Near the end, in lines that would later be described as cryptic, Meghan wrote about someone else. A name, blurred in leaked versions, that has never been publicly identified. I met someone who reminded me who I was before the palace, before the noise, before I lost myself in someone else's story. That single sentence would ignite endless speculation. Who was she referring to? A friend? A confidant? A former flame? Harry reportedly confronted her about it weeks later. Who is he? He asked quietly, holding the leaked excerpt in his hand. Meghan's reply was measured. It's not about a person, she said. It's about a feeling. But deep down, Harry didn't believe her. That conversation, cold, tense, unresolved, marked the last night they slept under the same roof as husband and wife. The next morning, Meghan was gone. No note, no explanation, just a quiet absence that said more than words ever could. And so the letter, her ghost on paper, became the only clue anyone had to understand the woman who once vowed, "I'll never walk away." In the weeks that followed, royal analysts picked apart every phrase like sacred text. Some called it manipulative, others called it brave. But no one could deny its power. It read less like a goodbye and more like a prophecy. And as the world soon learned, every word in that letter would come true. Because when Meghan finally stood before those cameras, when she looked straight into the lenses and said, "I'm divorcing Prince Harry," she wasn't breaking news. She was fulfilling what she had already written. The letter was never a secret goodbye. It was a countdown. And though no one knew it then, the name she signed at the bottom wasn't Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. It was just Meghan, a woman stripped of titles, masks, and pretense. And what that woman did next, after sending the letter, after vanishing, after confronting the world, would send shockwaves through both Hollywood and the palace alike. Because when Harry finally discovered where that letter ended up, his reaction would ignite a scandal that no one in the royal family could contain. But that comes later. For now, remember this. The story didn't begin with a press conference. It began with ink, paper, and a single word written across an envelope: closure. And as fate would have it, that word would be the last thing she and Harry ever shared before everything they built collapsed in front of the entire world. But what Harry did next would destroy more than just their marriage. It would expose secrets that even Meghan never intended to be revealed. And that's where everything truly began to unravel. It was 2:47 a.m. in London when the phone rang inside Clarence's house. The shrill tone cut through the silence like a knife, echoing down the polished hallway lined with portraits of kings long gone. The butler, startled from half-sleep, hesitated before answering. No one called at this hour unless something was wrong, catastrophically wrong. On the other end of the line, the voice was trembling but familiar. "It's Harry. I need to speak to my father." Now, Prince Harry's voice didn't sound like the confident, rebellious Duke of Sussex that the world knew. It was shaky, anxious, filled with the kind of fear that only comes when a man realizes his entire life is collapsing in real time. The butler hesitated, his tone cautious. "His Majesty is resting, sir." "Wake him," Harry said flatly. "Please, it's urgent." Those last two words, urgent and please, carried something raw, something desperate. Moments later, King Charles appeared, robe tied loosely, glasses perched on his nose, irritation etched across his tired face. "This better be important," he muttered, taking the receiver. "Harry." There was a pause, long enough to make Charles frown. "Harry, what's happened?" Then came the sound of shallow breathing. "It's Meghan," Harry finally said. "She's leaving me." The silence that followed was absolute. For a moment, all Charles could hear was the faint static on the line. Then, quietly, he asked, "You're certain?" "She's gone, Pa. She left Montecito." Her lawyer confirmed it. "She's going public." King Charles rubbed his temples. "Good heavens." She wrote a statement. "It's happening tomorrow morning." Charles sighed deeply. He had seen scandals before. Diana's confessions, Andrew's disgrace, the endless Windsor wars that came and went like storms. But this, his younger son's imploding marriage, broadcast across continents, was different. It wasn't just a scandal. It was history repeating itself in real time. "Harry," Charles said carefully, his voice softer now, "you mustn't make any rash decisions. The worst thing you can do is react emotionally." "Emotionally?" Harry snapped. "My wife is leaving me on camera, Father. The woman I gave up my family for. How do I not react?" Charles closed his eyes. "You're not the first prince to lose a marriage," he said quietly. "But you can decide whether you lose your dignity with it." For a few seconds, neither spoke. Then Harry's voice cracked. "I thought you'd care." "I do care," Charles replied, his tone suddenly heavy with something unspoken. But I also care about the crown. And every time one of you makes a scene, it bleeds. Bleeds. Harry repeated, stunned. You're talking about the monarchy like it's a patient, not your family. Charles didn't reply. Instead, he adjusted his glasses, staring blankly into the dark. You chose to leave this life, Harry. You can't call me now and expect me to fix the consequences of your freedom. Harry's tone dropped to a whisper. So that's it. You're washing your hands of me. Charles hesitated. I'm saying you must face what you started. You and Meghan made your bed. Now lie in it. The words landed like a blade. For a brief moment, Harry didn't even breathe. You sound just like them, he said bitterly. Like the courtiers. Like the men who killed Mum's spirit. The silence after that was heavier than before. Charles took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Harry, don't go there. But it was too late. You think I don't see it? The way you talk about image, control, the crown, it's always about protecting the machine, never the people inside it. You let it destroy Mom. And now it's destroying me. Charles's jaw clenched. You've had every chance to live a peaceful life. You walked away. You wanted privacy, and yet you invite cameras into your home. What did you expect? Harry's voice shook. I expected support. I expected love. Charles exhaled slowly. You're a father now. You'll understand someday that love and protection don't always look the same. Then came the sound of muffled tears, quick, angry ones. You don't get it, Harry whispered. You never did. There was another pause. And then, softer this time, Charles said, maybe you're right. But son, don't let this destroy what's left of you. The press will devour every ounce of pain you show them. Do not give them a feast. Harry didn't answer. His silence was the sound of defeat, the kind that crawls under your skin and stays there. Finally, Charles added, I'll have my people draft a statement in case this becomes public. It already is, Harry muttered. What do you mean? Her team's been teasing it for days. There's a leak. The world's waiting for her to say the words. Charles stiffened. Good God. So this was planned. Harry nodded, even though his father couldn't see it. Every bit of it. Then brace yourself, Charles said grimly. Because when she speaks, the monarchy will speak too. And neither of us will come out untouched. The line went dead. For a moment, Charles just stood there, staring into space. Then he turned to his private secretary and said, Get the communications director. We need to prepare a statement before breakfast. Meanwhile, back in California, Harry sat in the darkened living room, the phone still in his hand. The screen glowed faintly with the time, 6:23 p.m. He had called his father hoping for reassurance, guidance, something to hold on to. But what he got instead was cold strategy. And that's when something inside him began to crack. He poured himself a drink, something he hadn't done in months. Just one, then another. The silence in the house was unbearable. Every memory of Meghan seemed to echo around him. Her laughter in the kitchen, her perfume in the hallway, the soft hum she made when reading to the kids. But tonight, all of it was gone. He scrolled through his phone again, staring at her name. He wanted to call, to beg, to reason. But pride stopped him. Instead, he opened a note on his phone and started typing. A message he would never send. I would have fought the world for you again. But you stopped believing I could win. He hit delete. Back in London, Charles stood by the window, watching the dawn creep across the city. His reflection in the glass looked older than he remembered, tired, haunted, and weary of the endless repetition of family tragedy. An aide approached quietly. Your Majesty, shall we issue a statement expressing concern? Charles shook his head. No, not yet. The more we say, the bigger the fire grows. But sir, the press will demand. The press will always demand, Charles interrupted sharply. Let them chase their stories. We'll wait for the storm to pass. But deep down, he knew this storm wasn't passing. It was just beginning. Because hours later, word reached the palace that Meghan's legal team had already sent formal notice, not just of divorce proceedings, but of claims that would drag royal institutions into public scrutiny once more. Dear God, Charles muttered. She's going to burn the house down. And perhaps she was. Back in Montecito, Harry finally put down his glass. His phone buzzed again. A message, not from Meghan, but from an unknown number. He hesitated before opening it. The text read, You should have read the letter before it was too late. No name, no context, but he knew exactly what it meant. The letter, the one Meghan wrote. the one she never meant for him to see. His hands began to tremble. He dialed her number anyway. Straight to voicemail. "Meg, please," he whispered. "If there's something I need to know, tell me now. I'm still your husband." No reply. The sun had barely risen over the Pacific when the first headlines broke. Meghan Markle to issue personal statement. Sources say divorce confirmed. Harry threw his phone across the room. It shattered against the wall. Somewhere in London, Charles was already on the phone with his advisors. Somewhere in California, Meghan was rehearsing her lines in front of a mirror. And somewhere deep inside Harry, something dark took root, a feeling he hadn't known since the night his mother died. That mix of betrayal, helplessness, and grief. Because now, once again, he was the boy left behind. But this time, there was no one left to blame but himself. And as the world prepared for Meghan's bombshell announcement, Harry made one final call, not to his father, not to his brother, but to someone from his past. Someone who had once promised him, "If it ever gets bad again, I'll come find you." And when that person answered, the story took a turn no one saw coming. Because the next voice Harry heard didn't belong to family, it belonged to the palace. And that voice said, "We need to talk. Immediately." What they told him would change everything he thought he knew about Meghan's motives, and force him to confront the truth behind the letter, the leaks, and the empire his love had helped destroy. But that's the next chapter, when Harry discovers that the divorce wasn't just about heartbreak. It was about power. And the war for control of that power had only just begun. It was no coincidence that while Prince Harry was breaking down in London and calling his father in desperation, Meghan Markle was in Los Angeles sitting across a polished conference table from two of Hollywood's most influential executives. The city outside was bathed in late morning light, that golden haze that always made everything look softer than it really was. Inside, though, the tension was electric. She wasn't there as the Duchess of Sussex. She was there as Meghan Markle, brand, icon, producer, and woman on the verge of reclaiming her independence. The meeting was off the record, of course. Everyone signed NDAs. Phones were left outside. The executives were polite but curious. One leaned forward, tapping his pen lightly. "So, Meghan, what's next?" "Word is, you've got something big coming." Her lips curved in that trademark half-smile, the one that had charmed millions and infuriated just as many. "You could say that," she replied. "I think it's time people hear my story from me. Not filtered, not twisted." They nodded, intrigued. She knew how to hold a room. That mix of vulnerability and command that made her impossible to look away from. What she didn't say out loud was that this wasn't just about telling her story. This was about shifting the balance of power, away from Harry, away from the royal family, away from anyone who thought they could define her. One of the executives leaned back. "And Harry? He'll be involved." There was a pause. Meghan's expression softened for half a second. "No," she said. "This one's mine." Silence. Then, a small smile from across the table. "Well," the other executive said, "Netflix loves a story about transformation. About finding your voice again. Transformation. Voice. Freedom." Those were her new buzzwords. Words that sold well in LA and made the British tabloids froth at the mouth. As she left the meeting, her phone buzzed with a message from her publicist. Press caught wind of the announcement. "You sure you want to move forward this week?" Meghan typed back, "I've waited long enough. Let's move." Outside, paparazzi lenses followed her every step, but this time she didn't hide. She wore her confidence like armor. The cameras weren't enemies anymore. They were tools. Meanwhile, back in London, Harry was learning about the meeting in real time from a contact he still had inside the entertainment world. "She met with Netflix. Without you." The message read. Harry stared at it in disbelief. For years, their Netflix deal had been their joint project. Their shared redemption arc together. They were supposed to rebuild their public image, tell stories that mattered, show the world they were more than royal outcasts. But now, she was going solo. He called her again. No answer. Another text. No reply. Hours passed, and the headlines began to shift tone. Sources claim Meghan Markle to launch solo documentary. Insiders say Meghan's Netflix partnership expanding, without Harry's involvement. Sussex empire split. Tensions rise as Duchess negotiates independent deal. Harry's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Advisors, friends, journalists pretending to be friends. Everyone wanted a comment. He had none. He poured himself another drink and muttered, This is what she's been planning all along. But deep down, he didn't believe it. Not fully. He still wanted to think she loved him. Maybe she did, but not the way she used to. That night, a senior Netflix executive called Meghan's assistant. "We're all in," they said. "But if you're serious about this, we'll need full creative control from your side." And a statement. A big one. That big one was the announcement. He called her again. Straight to voicemail. "Meg, it's me. Please, if you're going to do this, at least tell me first. Don't let me find out from a memo. We promised we'd always face things together." He ended the call and stared into the quiet room. Together. The words sounded hollow now. Meanwhile, back in LA, Meghan was reviewing her final draft of the public statement with her PR team. Every word was scrutinized, refined, tested for emotional resonance and public reaction. One advisor suggested softening the phrasing, less finality, more ambiguity. Something like, "Harry and I are taking time apart to reflect." Meghan shook her head. "No, people need clarity. I'm done living in half-truths." She looked straight into the camera as they rehearsed. "For years, I believed love could survive anything. But love without freedom isn't love, it's captivity. And I refuse to live that way anymore." It was raw, sharp, marketable. The team exchanged glances. They knew this wasn't just a statement. It was the opening act of a global rebranding. Because in Hollywood, endings were just prequels. Across the ocean, Charles received another report from the Palace communications team. "She's going public in 24 hours, the aide said. Charles pinched the bridge of his nose. "God help us all." He turned to his staff. "Do nothing until she speaks. If we respond too soon, it'll look like panic." But it was too late. By dawn, every major media outlet in Britain and America had the same headline ready to go live the moment Meghan stepped up to the podium. Harry watched from the living room, half drunk and half awake, as the world's cameras focused on the woman he once called his everything. She adjusted the microphone, looked directly into the lens, and said the words that would make history. "I'm divorcing Prince Harry." The crowd gasped. Flashbulbs erupted. Somewhere, an editor hit publish. And in that instant, the power shifted. Not just between husband and wife, but between the monarchy and the media, between heritage and modernity, between truth and the story. Meghan walked off the stage without looking back. Her car door shut. The convoy pulled away. And from that moment on, it was clear, Meghan Markle wasn't just leaving her marriage. She was rewriting the rules of the royal game. But what came next would make even this look like a calm rehearsal, because the one person she never expected to speak was about to break his silence. And when Harry did, he wasn't just hurt. He was armed with something that could bring her new empire crashing down, and no one expected her to talk. Not after everything that had happened. Not after the divorce announcement, the media frenzy, the royal silence. But when the therapist who had once counseled both Harry and Meghan finally spoke, quietly, off the record, to a trusted journalist, her words painted a picture far more complex than the headlines could ever capture. Her name was Dr. Miriam Clark, a trauma specialist with a reputation for confidentiality and compassion. She'd been recommended to the couple by a mutual friend years earlier, back when their struggles were whispered about in hushed tones. The world thought Harry and Meghan were seeking therapy to heal from royal pressure. The truth was darker. Dr. Clark didn't see a fairy tale couple fighting external enemies. She saw two people at war with themselves. When the journalist first reached out to her months later, Dr. Clark refused to comment. "They're my clients," she said firmly. "Even if I could speak, I wouldn't." But that changed after Meghan's press conference. Because when Meghan told the world, "I'm divorcing Prince Harry," she didn't just break her marriage. She broke the silence of those who had seen what no one else had, the unraveling behind closed doors. In a small cafe on the outskirts of Santa Barbara, Dr. Clark agreed to meet under one condition. No recordings, no names, no quotes. Just truth. The journalist nodded. And Dr. Clark began. "They were extraordinary," she said softly. "Not because they were royals, but because they truly believed they could rewrite what love looks like under pressure. But the problem was, they never agreed on the script." She paused, stirring her coffee slowly. Harry came in with guilt. He carried his mother's ghost everywhere he went. Meghan came in with armor. She'd spent her whole life protecting herself from rejection. Together, they looked like strength, but really, they were holding each other up with broken bones. Dr. Clark described the sessions as emotional minefields. Harry was open, raw, childlike in his pain. He talked about loss, betrayal, and never feeling enough. Not for the crown, not for his brother, not even for himself. Meghan, on the other hand, was precise, measured, almost too composed. She didn't cry easily. Instead, she analyzed, dissected emotions like an actress studying a role. She'd say things like, "I just need to understand why he does this," or "Why can't he see what I'm trying to build?" Clark recalled, she wasn't cold. She was terrified of being misunderstood. And in that fear lay the seed of their destruction. Because Harry didn't want to be understood. He wanted to be accepted, flaws, doubts, and all. He wanted love without performance. But Meghan couldn't give that. Not because she didn't love him, but because her survival depended on control. She told me once, Clark said quietly, that every time she started to trust someone completely, they left. So she learned to leave first. That single sentence lingered between them. The journalist leaned forward. So when she left Harry, she wasn't punishing him, Clark said. She was protecting herself. The journalist blinked. From what? Clark's answer was almost a whisper. From losing herself again. Outside, cars passed by, oblivious to the magnitude of what was being said. Inside, Clark continued, her voice soft but steady. Harry adored her. But his adoration became dependence. He looked to her for healing, for validation, for identity. It's too much for any partner to carry. The turning point, according to her, came months before the divorce. During one of their last joint sessions, Harry had confessed that he was terrified Meghan would leave him. He said, "I keep waking up afraid she'll realize she doesn't need me anymore." Meghan's reply, Clark remembered, was chilling in its honesty. "Maybe the problem is that you need me more than you love me." Silence. Then tears. Harry didn't return for another session after that. From that moment, Clark said, the balance shifted. He withdrew. She advanced. He sought peace. She sought purpose. And both felt betrayed. When news of Meghan's Netflix meeting broke, Clark wasn't surprised. That was her coping mechanism, she explained. When Meghan feels cornered, she creates. She builds something new so she doesn't have to face what's crumbling behind her. The journalist asked if Meghan had mentioned the divorce during their final sessions. Clark nodded slowly. Not directly, but she said something that haunts me to this day. She said, "I love him, but I can't save him. And if I stay, I'll drown with him." She sipped her coffee, letting the words sink in. That wasn't cruelty. That was clarity. Still, Clark admitted there was a moment, one final meeting with Harry, that changed her perspective completely. It was after Meghan had moved out, but before the public knew. Harry had come alone, unshaven, exhausted, eyes hollow. He looked at me and said, "She took the light with her." And then, for the first time since I met him, he started talking about his mother, not as a memory, but as a wound. He said, "Everyone keeps saying Meghan's like Mom, but she's not. Mom loved people so much it destroyed her. Meghan loves survival, and that's what makes her stronger and me weaker." Clark had told him, gently, "It's not about strength or weakness. It's about need." But Harry just shook his head. "No, doctor. It's about love. And love shouldn't feel like a negotiation." That was the last thing he said before he left. He never came back. Weeks later, when the announcement aired, Clark wasn't surprised. But she was saddened, not by the divorce itself, but by what she called the illusion of empowerment. "The public sees Meghan as a woman who broke free," she said. "But what they don't see is that freedom, when born out of pain, rarely feels like victory. It feels like exile." The journalist sat back, stunned. "So, you're saying she's not as happy as she seems?" Clark gave a small, knowing smile. No one who truly wins a war walks away smiling. She paused, her gaze distant. "But here's what no one knows. Before she left for Los Angeles, Meghan sent me an email. It wasn't long, just a few sentences. She thanked me for listening. And then she wrote, 'If I ever tell my story, I'll tell it without tears.'" The journalist frowned. Meaning, it meant she'd already made peace with being misunderstood. That email, Clark said, arrived 2 days before the Netflix meeting. 2 days before Meghan began the next phase of her transformation. And yet, as Clark pointed out, transformation always comes with a price. For Meghan, that price was isolation. For Harry, it was identity. The interview ended after an hour. Clark stood up, gathering her things. "If you quote me," she said, "say this. They both wanted to be loved for who they were. They just couldn't agree on who that was anymore." Outside, the California sun was blinding. The journalist walked away, her mind racing. Within days, rumors about a therapist confession began circulating online. Names were redacted, but details matched too closely to be coincidence. For Harry, reading those leaks felt like being dissected alive. He called his friend angrily. "Who's talking? How are they getting this stuff?" "Someone close to her," the friend said quietly. "Maybe someone you both trusted." Harry's voice cracked. "The therapist? We don't know." He hung up, hands trembling. The thought that their most private conversations, their rawest pain, were now public made his skin crawl. He poured another drink, his third of the night, and muttered, "She said she wanted privacy. And now this." Meanwhile, Meghan's team denied everything. "Pure fabrication," her representative told reporters. But the damage was done. The headlines read, "Therapist claims Meghan left to save herself." Insider, Harry wanted love, Meghan wanted control. Dr. Clark went silent again. She disappeared from public view. But her words lingered in the public imagination. Because now, everyone wanted to know, what else had she heard? What other confessions had been buried in those private sessions? And though she never said it aloud, Clark's final note in her private journal revealed the truth. There was something she didn't disclose, something Meghan said in confidence that made her blood run cold. "I'm not the only one leaving him," Meghan had said. "Someone else will too. And when they do, the world will finally see the man behind the crown." Who did she mean? No one knew. But within weeks, that prophecy would start to come true, and when it did, the fallout would be devastating. Because as the palace braced for damage control and Hollywood celebrated Meghan's rebirth, another storm was already brewing. One that would pit loyalty against legacy and expose secrets no therapist could ever heal. And what came next would make even Meghan's announcement look small in comparison. From the outside, it looked like paradise. Sunlight streamed through the Spanish-style arches of the Montecito estate. Bougainvillea vines wrapped around the white columns. Hummingbirds hovered near fountains, and the Pacific breeze whispered through the lemon trees. It was picture-perfect, the very image of calm domestic bliss. But inside, the silence was heavy enough to choke on. In those final weeks before the divorce announcement, Montecito had stopped feeling like a home and started feeling like a film set, one where the actors no longer believed in their lines. Harry still woke early, the way he used to during his army days. He'd take long walks through the garden, earbuds in, trying to outrun the noise inside his head. But no matter how far he walked, he could never escape the echo of her last words. "Maybe the problem is that you need me more than you love me." He replayed that sentence over and over until it lost meaning, until it became just a sound. Inside the house, Meghan had developed her own routine. Early yoga, black coffee, hours on her laptop, not answering personal emails, but coordinating brand pitches, meetings, and production outlines for her new solo project. She told herself she was keeping busy, but she was really building distance. Even the staff noticed the change. One of the nannies quietly told a friend, "They barely see each other anymore. It's like they live in two different worlds that happen to share a roof." At breakfast, they no longer talked. Harry would read the paper, though he'd stopped looking at the front page long ago. Meghan would scroll her phone, expression unreadable. The children were shielded from most of it. Archie asked once, "Why doesn't Mummy laugh anymore?" And Harry didn't know how to answer. The tension in Montecito wasn't loud. It was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that only exists when love is dying slowly and both people are too exhausted to fight. One evening, Harry returned from a charity meeting to find the living room filled with boxes, Meghan's office items, labeled and sealed. He froze in the doorway. "You're moving?" She looked up, calm, almost serene. "Just organizing. I need space for new work files." "Work files?" he repeated, his voice hollow. "You mean your new show? The one I found out about from Netflix, not you." Meghan sighed softly. "Harry, please don't do this." "Do what?" "Talk. Ask questions. Try to understand what happened to us." "Nothing happened," she said, voice tightening. "We just want different things now." He stepped closer. "Different things? I wanted peace. You wanted purpose. I gave up everything for that. What else did you want me to lose?" For a moment, her eyes softened, A flicker of the woman who once held his hand on royal balconies, who whispered, "We're in this together." But it passed. "I wanted to stop feeling guilty for wanting more," she said quietly. "You wanted to stop feeling guilty for wanting less. We're not broken, Harry. We're just done pretending." He stared at her, speechless. She turned away, her reflection flickering in the glass window, distant, composed, untouchable. That night, they slept in separate rooms. Not for the first time, but this time it felt final. Days turned into weeks. The housekeeper said the silence felt haunted. Music no longer played. Dinner plates stayed half-eaten. The children's laughter was the only thing keeping the place from feeling like a mausoleum. One night, Meghan was on a video call with her mother, Doria. She tried to sound upbeat, but her voice cracked halfway through. "I just want peace, Mom." Doria's reply was gentle but firm. "Peace doesn't come from leaving, baby. It comes from telling the truth." Meghan swallowed hard. "Then I guess it's time." The next morning, she left for Los Angeles again. Harry stood at the top of the stairs watching her car pull away. No goodbye kiss. No last glance. Just silence and tail lights fading down the driveway. He went back inside, sat at the kitchen island, and looked around. The coffee cup she'd left behind still had lipstick on the rim. Her scent lingered faintly in the air, gardenia and something colder underneath, like rain before a storm. He whispered to no one, "What do I do now?" That same day, one of their close staff members received a call from a PR contact asking to confirm a developing story. The contact claimed to have information that Meghan had already signed a solo production deal, separate from Archewell, separate from Harry. When the aide confronted Harry about it, he shook his head in disbelief. "She wouldn't. Not without telling me." But when he called her later that evening, the call went straight to voicemail. By now, even the staff began to take sides quietly. Some remained fiercely loyal to Harry, sympathetic to his isolation. Others, perhaps sensing where the real power was shifting, aligned with Meghan's new team. Whisper networks formed. Schedules stopped aligning. Meetings were missed. Trust evaporated like morning fog. The once vibrant Archewell office, born from dreams of changing the world, became eerily still. Calls went unanswered. Emails stacked up. Even longtime supporters noticed the rift. A partner in London sent a diplomatic message. "Please confirm continuity of leadership structure." Translation: who's in charge now? No one knew. By now, paparazzi drones began circling again, not for photos of happy family life, but for proof of separation. Every movement was scrutinized. Every delivery truck was rumored to carry divorce papers. One night, Harry went outside with a flashlight and shouted into the dark, "Leave us alone." But they weren't listening. The world had already smelled blood in the water. And yet, what the world didn't see were the small, heartbreaking moments behind those locked gates. Like when Harry found Meghan's old note tucked into a book. A note she'd written years ago during their early days in Windsor. It read, "No matter how hard the world gets, we fight it together." He folded it carefully and slipped it into his wallet. It was the only promise she hadn't kept. Or the night Archie wandered into Harry's room and asked, "Are you still my dad, even if we don't live together anymore?" Harry had to bite his lip until he tasted blood before answering. "Always, mate. Always." Those words haunted him, because deep down, he knew Archie wasn't asking about love. He was asking about stability. And Harry couldn't promise that anymore. Meanwhile, Meghan was living between two worlds, Montecito and Los Angeles. Publicly composed, privately unraveling. Friends said she seemed distracted, preoccupied, like someone rehearsing for a role that hasn't been written yet. In rare quiet moments, she would replay memories in her head. Their wedding, their escape from the UK, Harry laughing as he cooked breakfast on their first morning in California. She missed that version of them. The simple, naive dreamers who believed love could outshine the crown. But every time that nostalgia crept in, she reminded herself of something she had written in her secret letter. Love shouldn't feel like a negotiation. By now, the palace had also gone on alert. Security details were reviewing leaks. Advisors held late-night calls. Even the Queen's former aides were being consulted for damage control, quietly murmuring that history appears to be repeating itself. But if the royals thought Meghan would retreat, they were wrong. She was preparing her next move. That same week, she met privately with a senior producer from a major streaming platform. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, The producer's assistant overheard Meghan saying, "The story won't be about him. It'll be about what happens when a woman finally stops apologizing." When news of that quote reached Harry, he laughed bitterly. "So I'm the villain now," he muttered. "Fine." But it wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. He began calling old friends in the UK again. Some answered cautiously, unsure what to say. Others ignored him altogether. He'd become radioactive, too controversial for the royals, too unstable for Hollywood.